Welcome back to another episode of the Freight Pod. This is our second episode of the new year. I have been struggling to get you the episodes as often as I want. It's been a busy couple weeks with the holidays. I also am recovering again. Last time I was recovering from a Michigan National Championship. This time it's my own bachelor party, which I just got home from about 30 hours ago, which was obviously just a couple guys playing golf. It was nice and easy, so there's nothing much to recover from. I'm fine. I'm telling myself that as I get dialed in here. Welcome to the show, though. I got Jordan Graft today, CEO of Highway. How are we doing today, Jordan?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Andrew. Great to see you.
It's great to see you as well. This is actually our first time interacting with one another, which is a bit of a surprise to me, but I kind of like the surprise action because, you know, we come in blind and just figure it out. And I think we're going to have a good time here today. Yeah,
man. I know. I think, I've known your brother and some other people, but you and I've never actually talked face to face. So this is really cool. I know a lot about you. I know your story. I followed you from afar. I watched your debate with Dan Lewis, almost a year and a half ago, which, it's kind of funny looking back on that now. But I got a ton of respect for you and what you built, and it's just great. Thanks for thinking of me and inviting me.
Of course. Well, you're a builder yourself, and that's a big reason why we're here today. So let's take it back. So, today you're the CEO of Highway. This is your third act as a CEO. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. Yep.
How old are you?
I'm 36.
36, third time CEO. Let's before your CEO days. I mean, you went to school, you went to Baylor, graduated from there, and went into in the investment world, private equity world. Walk me through that path.
Yeah. So I grew up in a small town in western Oklahoma. Now, we were really good Southern Baptists. So my mother made my older brother go to Baylor, and because it's a Baptist university. And so I went to Baylor because my brother and sister went there. I was the youngest of five. Baylor was awesome. Met my wife there, Brittany, and we both went to work for JP Morgan right out of college. And we did about a year and a half here in Dallas, and then transferred to New York. And we were two young, married, no kids, double income people living in Manhattan, and it was awesome. I didn't realize how much time I had in my life back then, but it was a great experience. So did that, and then we got married, and then we moved to Boston. We hated Boston. I'm sorry, I shouldn't generalize entire cities, but Boston was not great for us. We were pregnant and trying to have a baby in the middle of February. We didn't know anyone, and it was I was from Oklahoma. I didn't even know Boston was north of New York when I took the job to go to Boston. And we get on a plane, and I'm like, wait, we're going north? That's not the direction I want to go. But yeah, so that was a really fun time of our lives, and we got to see new cities, do new things. Got pregnant unexpectedly at 25, which turned out to be an amazing blessing. But I thought my world was over when she came in and she's like, I'm pregnant. I was like, that doesn't make sense. I want a refund on our birth control pills. She's going to love that I said that on this podcast. I said that to the OB, and they were like, get out of our office. You're an idiot. So I was a pretty big idiot at 25. Yeah.
I was right there with you. I where do I go from here? So 25 years old, you're going to become a father. You're working in private equity, right?
Yeah, a grunt, an analyst, the bottom of the tree.
And was this at all related to transportation, or didn't even know a thing about it at the time?
Oh, no. I was covering grocery stores. So I worked a lot with grocery stores. I worked on the sale of Harris Teeter to Kroger. I worked on HEB. Did a lot of stuff with Walmart, Publix, Safeway, Ralph's, all those grocery stores. I was the analyst. We had there was a senior banker who had those relationships. So I worked on that. And so I spent a lot of my time walking around grocery store aisles in a suit at 25, helping people try and buy different grocery store companies.
And from there, you end up starting a business, Crate-Bind, right?
Yeah. Actually, what we were in Boston, and I wanted to go do something entrepreneurial, and I've been all around all these grocery stores, and it was 2014. Instacart was just getting going, And so I was like, hey, let's go do grocery delivery in a vacation market, because people on their vacation want to buy grocery, are less price sensitive. They need less selection. They like the convenience of delivery. Grocery is the last category of retail to go online, and to delivery. COVID kind of supercharged that. But so we went to like 30A in Northwest Florida, because 15 million people visit it every year, and most people drive and stay in homes with like refrigerators and need groceries. And so we went and did that, and that was a crazy experience. It was my first time starting something. You say like be the CEO 3 times before you're 36. If you fail a lot, you can run that number up pretty quick, man. But it was a great experience because people really wanted the product. It was like a great product, but a terrible business. Like it was horrible business, and we were never going to make $1. And because all the deliveries happen on 2 days, and so you can't really even like hire. It's all the surge demand. It's really, really painful. But I owned refrigerated box trucks. So like I was technically a carrier, I guess, but no one should have ever hired me. Like that's probably illegal. And,
Wait, so this was crate binds, right?
That was the predecessor. We called it Vacay Foods. That's what became Crate Bind, our IT development firm. Yeah.
So, okay. So your initial thought was we're going to create a grocery delivery business specifically catered to vacation towns. And it was Brittany involved in this, your wife, or she was pregnant doing something else, or like you guys were like, we're going all in on grocery delivery in vacays. Like as if I wasn't dumb enough as the 25-year-old, I've got now a pregnant wife that like, I'm trying to figure out what to do. So I'm going to start a business.
Oh man, no. So Brittany was all in with me. So she is a Proverbs 31 woman. She is all in everything we do. We do it together. She was pregnant with a 3-4 month old, walking the aisles of Walmart, doing price discovery, like coming up with our SKU collection for our website where people could order online. Like she's the most wonderful and beautiful, hardworking woman. She is amazing. No, she was all in. She was not going to be left out, and it didn't slow her down one bit. I don't know how she did it. I don't know how she did, but yeah, and we moved with a 6-month-old. We left Boston with a 6-month-old and went to Florida, and just did life. But that part of our life, though, was where we learned to code. So because like we were getting so big, we were doing so many deliveries. That first Father's Day, my first Father's Day as a father, was the single worst day of my life, because we had all these people coming to Florida and they were ordering groceries, and we had like $30,000 in groceries to deliver in one day. Well, that's 10,000 items across 3 temperature zones, reverse packed into a truck. Like we had zero chance of success of making that work. And that's where, coming out of that, like I was up for like 48 straight hours trying to just get all these groceries to all these people, and we failed miserably that weekend. But on Monday, I was like, okay, we got to find a way to like have some sort of system. And I messed with VBA macros before in Excel, and I just got on our BigCommerce API, our BigCommerce stores API page, and figured out like, okay, this is probably something. And just out of necessity, we built this system that would take the orders off the website, build a pick list in the order that things were positioned in the warehouse, separated by temperature zone. And that like changed our business. And I fell in love with it, fell in love with coding at that point.
So it was kind of out of desperation, like on the heels of failure with this, you had this idea, you kind of brought it to life maybe more quickly than it should have been. So it didn't have this is kind of the definition of building an airplane while flying, which is very much what we felt when we were building Molo. And I bet a lot of entrepreneurs feel that too. So there was kind of this pivot needed on your behalf in terms of coding things the right way to, I guess, get more process. Is that the right way to think about it?
Just build a system. Like it was my first like web app that I built that like would go and pull data from here, sort it, organize it based on, whatever, and print a pick list where we could hand it to the $15 hour employee to go pick the orders through the warehouse. Like, yeah, that was it. It was, I wish I'd have kept that code. I should have kept it because it's probably just like horrible to look at looking back at it now, but it worked and it changed everything. Like I can't like, that feeling, that moment was like, I was in love with it. I was like, I love writing software. This is the best feeling ever. There was this thing in the physical world that didn't work, and I was able to do this thing in a computer and it make this thing work. And
You put the puzzle pieces together.
yeah,
Essentially.
yeah. Oh, and I loved it. And so we get to the end of the summer, and like multiple things kind of happened in my life. Like God had a plan and a purpose for why we were in Vacay Foods and why we failed. Like we 100% failed. Like it was a failure. And at the end of the summer, we knew we didn't want to keep doing it. We weren't going to make money doing it. The software we were writing was actually more valuable than us running around delivering groceries. And then my dad was sick. So my dad was sick. He was in the hospital in Cleveland at the Cleveland Clinic. He needed a liver transplant. He took a medicine called amiodarone for his heart, and the doctors weren't monitoring his blood levels, and he took it for too long, and they should have detected it, but it caused cirrhosis of his liver. He was a Southern Baptist man. Like he probably had 2 beers his entire life. It was like the most just frustrating thing for, a son to be dealing with. It was like he did everything right. Like he didn't have a crazy lifestyle, didn't deserve it. And he's there on this liver floor with, people that made really bad choices and ended up with a failed liver. And so I was a living liver donor for him. And my wife and I, we moved our baby up with our family and our Hudson, who is now probably like 9 months old, 10 months old. And we were in the Cleveland Clinic in the Cleveland area for like almost 6 months. And it was such an amazing time as a family. Not only my extended family, but just for me and Brittany and Hudson, our son, because we've been running so hard with Vacay Foods. And like, it was just a time of like respite. Like it was a time of rest and restoration and healing. And God humbled me through that process because I thought I was just going to show up. Yeah, I'm 28, 27 now. I don't remember. I'm just going to, they'll take my liver and they'll cut it in half and give him part, and I'll just walk out of here in 7 days. And that's not what happened. And I was incredibly humbled because I got infections and I kept going back into the hospital. But just like through all of it, it was really a moment when God was teaching me to like be humble. Like, because I was a very proud 25, 26-year-old. I thought I could do anything. I thought I was really smart and everything had gone my way most throughout my life. I'd never faced like real adversity. And this was the first time to like, hey, you can't control this outcome and you're going to have to suffer through it.
I mean, that's a tremendous amount of wisdom for someone. Maybe it's more reflective now. Did you feel that way in the moment? I mean, because I think I was similar to you maybe in that kind of 25, 26-year-old take on the world mentality, and I have control issues. So I don't know if that was something that you similarly dealt with as a young entrepreneur, but like everything's got to be done right. You want to make sure that you do all the things the right way. And then there are some aspects, not of luck maybe, but things that aren't in your control that will happen and you need to kind of react. But I used to struggle with getting pretty frustrated when things didn't go as planned. I'm curious, did you have that kind of humility in the moment? Did you have that kind of patience? Or is this something that it hit you hard and it took a while for you to realize like, wow, this has really brought our family together? Like, what was that actually like emotionally for you to deal with, and how did you deal with it in the moment?
Oh yeah, man. No, I was not. I was impetuous. I was arrogant. Yeah, I was angry. I was angry in the moment. Angry that my dad wasn't getting better right away, and frustrated. That was the refining part where like Brittany was spoken to with a ton of wisdom in the moment, and she was like, "This is good. This is a purpose. Stop trying to make this go faster. You're not going to make it go faster. You've got to accept that you're on a timeline that you don't control." And no, it wasn't until after, and it wasn't until the season after that I really gained the discipline of humility through it. No, I was a horrible patient. I was frustrating to the medical staff. I didn't want to do what they asked me to do. I wasn't like a bad husband, but I wasn't a great husband at 26, 27. Brittany put up with a lot of nonsense. I'm a much better husband at 36 after 10 years of refining. But yeah.
What do you feel like, would you say that today when you deal with challenges like that and adversity like that it takes as much refinement in the moment, or are you better at kind of recognizing, hey, I need to be patient? Is that a skill you've developed over the years? or is it
Man,
still something you struggle with?
oh no, like there'll be periods where I get in real sideways, and you know, it can be. There's a time at Triumph that I got real twisted up, and Aaron and I are incredibly close. Like I love my brother, and um, man, I have so much respect for him. He's the best older brother you could ever ask for. But there are times when we got all twisted up around each other just because of we were operating in close quarters, and man, like it. But thankfully, like yeah, like I feel like, and Brittany could testify to this, that I've gotten better at not causing so much emotional damage. Like conflict happens, adversity happens. What we can control is the amount of emotional damage we allow that happens to us and those around us. And so that's
Yep.
what I try and like that's what I'm trying to just be aware of when I'm with Brittany or around others. Like in the moments of adversity or conflict, is like, how do I make sure to not just let the emotional damage go wild and destroy? Because that's where you hurt relationships, and that's the things that take really long to repair. And so Brittany and I, like, the three things that we talk about that make our marriage successful is trust, respect, and conflict resolution. And so we're always checking those buckets of like, how's our trust? Making sure that we're continually adding to the trust bucket and not taking too many withdrawals. And then respect, like that's something that's very integral for how Brittany, like we have a ton of respect for one another. Like I have respect for who she is as a woman, how she is as a mother, her intellect, the way she carries herself. Like there's a really strong basis of respect that just anchors us. And then the third, the conflict resolution, is the more day-to-day combat, like making sure that if we have conflict, it doesn't take a huge emotional withdrawal to get through it. And that, like, that's something we learned coming out of Cleveland, and like with some mentors and some teachers that really spoke into it for us. And so that, yeah, I didn't have that. No, that was not in my repertoire at 26. No.
I mean, I relate so much to this, everything you're saying right now, because as someone who, I've been terrible at relationships in my life, and I'm now in like the ultimate relationship, the one that means more to me than anyone I've ever been in before. Like I'm getting married, in less than 3 months, and I'm so used to in my history of relationships, when the going gets tough, I run as far and fast as I can away from the conflict, and so we put a lot of work in, and have gotten a therapist to work to like understand how to communicate better. And it's interesting because what you said is such a core foundation of how we're trying to frame and build our own process, and respect being at the foundation of that. Like it's so easy in conflict to toss respect out the window because you're ready to go, you're ready for battle, and so you just start to look through the frankly the disrespectful things are what come to mind first.
Right.
But learning how to navigate conflict through a respectful means it's just something that I'm very consciously learning about, and this is the stuff that's worth doing, right? It's like, it's so funny because you think about life,
Amen.
like you want something, like growing up, like I want to get married and have kids and have a awesome relationship and build a family, and you just know that, and it's how, or at least for me, it was something I thought about so often. But you never thought about like the work it would take to make that a success, and the work it would take to make that happen. And that work is the hardest part. Obviously, I mean that I'm not speaking rocket science here. That's the hardest part. But that's the part that you just want to you instinctively want to run from. But it's what builds the future state of what you want to create together. And having to go through that adversity together and deal with that is what builds the kind of strength and love and respect that you and Brittany now have. It's having gone through 10 years or 15 years of kind of stuff together. You call it shit together, and coming out the other side. So
Yeah.
I appreciate your perspective and sharing that, because it does really resonate, and it's something that I'm very actively doing in my own life.
Amen. Man, amen. It's a great work. How much work has to go into it to make it a value? Like, and that's so true. It doesn't come easy. Like, it's work, but gosh, it's good work. God, the rewards are so sweet. I couldn't imagine not. Brittany, our marriage is such a place of rest for me, like in restoration. Like when I'm struggled and stressed in work or whatever, like going home to me is rest, because our home is in a great state because of our marriage and because of how great a mother she is to our kids and how much emphasis we put there. man, and I can't imagine if it wasn't. If it wasn't, my life would be so much harder. If you didn't have that place of trust and rest. Um, yeah, I say it a lot. She's a Proverbs 31 woman, man. Her husband and children rise up and call her blessed. Like she lives her life as a beacon for our daughter on how to be a mother and for our boys on the kind of woman that they should marry. And so I'm blessed to have her. She is amazing.
I can tell from just the 20 minutes we've talking, the amount you brought her up. You thought you were in trouble with her after a joke early, but I think you're actually doing well now. So let's make a slight pivot here. So she was there with you in the vacay business that became Crepe Bind. How did that pivot take place where you recognized, okay, vacation business is a bust. This thing's a failure. How did you pivot? How did you know to pivot, and what was ultimately the driving factor behind that decision?
Yeah. So first of all, just for other guys that walk in that path, like if they're listening to this, and first of all, your gut's going to tell you. Like as an entrepreneur, you have gut feelings, and like you got to know when your gut feelings telling you something bad, like it's generally right. And when it's especially with something bad, like gut feelings about good things are, I think sometimes you want to test with mentors and data points. The second was like, we just did the math, like the amount of work and inertia we would have to do, the amount of work we'd have to do is just this massive amount of inertia to make this little bit of profit. Man, this guy named Ed Crenshaw, who was the CEO of Publix, who had no business wasting time talking to me. But I got on the phone with him because he went to Baylor, and he was so wise. And he said, listen, Jordan, you're not going to make any money doing it. You're going to sell a lot of groceries. The capital cost is too high for the size of the market you're going into, and you're not going to be able to staff it up because you're going to do all your deliveries in 2 days. Like he got it. He knew he never had to deliver $1 of groceries, and he knew. And that wisdom speaking into my brain, like bounced around for a while and then settled down. I was like, okay, enough guys with enough at-bats and experience are telling me this isn't going to work. Like, I really like coding. I'd rather do that. They say this isn't going to work. Like, let's go. Let's fail fast. Like, yeah.
Was there any part of the 26-year-old arrogant Jordan in there who was like, this guy, I could beat this guy's wrong. I could prove him wrong.
Yeah. But you get beat down. Like delivering groceries I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And so like I was delivering. I was out there hustling in a green polo. Yes sir, yes ma'am. Like I'll put the Nestle Pure Life up here. It's a hard business. And so yeah, the fool has to be beat down. The fool has to have the knowledge and wisdom beat in his head. And so yeah, I had to have it beaten in my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you make the pivot, and what is the pivot? What does this business become?
So we built this really cool routing software for like this specific grocery market or this specific vacation market. And there's a lot of beach chair equipment rental businesses down there. And so we just started trying to sell it to them. Like, hey, like you could use the same, we'll build you a custom website. Because my partner, he liked doing front-end development work. I really like the server side. And so we sold our first one to a equipment rental business down there, beach chair rental business and bike rental. And we sold our first project for like $15,000. And we thought we were like rich. We're like, this is amazing. Like, let's just keep doing this. And so took that, and then a medical waste company here in Dallas. At this point, we'd relocated. We'd relocated back to Dallas, which was kind of home all along for us. And man, we just started hustling. Like, hey, who has a business problem that needs to be solved by tech? We'll build it, and we'll build it fast and cheap because we're hungry. And we were hungry. Like it was tight. But so we just started selling custom development projects to people that couldn't buy off-the-shelf software to solve the problem. So that's why it was like medical waste companies, because there's no TMS for medical waste companies, or beach chair rental because there's not that many of them. So it's all these niche hedge funds. We built stuff for hedge funds because that was kind of my background. So it's all these people that had unique problems that there wasn't off-the-shelf solution to solve because it was a niche market and wasn't big enough to build a product around. And it was a great experience. I got dozens of at-bats. Like people would pay me to build new things. So I would get the experience of like starting at zero and building all the tech for somebody's product idea. And they were paying me to do it. And we grew that team to about 20, 25 people here in Dallas. Brittany learned how to write in Objective-C in Swift, which is how you build mobile apps. So she would build iPhone apps. And so because she wanted to be involved. And she was really good at it. And man, we just the thing was 6 years, and it taught me how to sell. It taught me how to like hustle. Taught me how to build a team. Hadn't really built a team of professionals up until that point. Managed financials, and yeah, it was awesome.
So was Crepevine a success?
Yeah, it's still around. Like they still, we use them a little bit. I don't own it anymore. I sold to my partner, and he runs it. And but yeah, they're doing really well. They're really good. They got more into the design side. Like I was always more server side. I really like that aspect. John, who was involved with me, John Harlan, he was more design, and he has an amazing eye for design. So they've gone down more that path.
And what would you say was the best lesson that you took from that business, your time? I mean, that was your first real or successful startup as a CEO. What would you say, looking back, was your biggest takeaway that you've kept with you today?
Yeah, there's a couple things that stick in my head, but one was like the proverb about the man who gathers little by little accumulates much, and then he who accumulates quickly, it departs from him quickly. The Crepevine was a business of grinding it out. Like it is a ground game business. You've got to execute. You got to build great product. You got to hire great people. You got to make sure those people are good and producing really good code. Like it's a ground game business, and so you can't grow it quickly. Like you can't scale Crepevine quickly. It's made me slow down. I like going fast, and so it made me slow down and like learn how to build something that will last. And in a service business, as you know, like service businesses are hard, and that I learned. The other thing I learned is that I really, really wanted to build a product. I wanted to build something that could be used by lots of people, and just that it was out of like the challenge of doing it. It wasn't, I didn't have an idea to go build, and so that's. I learned like IT consulting is great, but it's a great launching point, but it's not where ultimately I wanted to be for the rest of my life.
It's harder to scale, right? Because, you solve one person's problem and then you got to go create a whole nother solution for someone else's problem. So I get why, in your current business, it's like you've created a product that thousands and thousands of companies can use. So you can stick to that product, refine it, make it better and better, and just sell it, have the right sales team to scale it kind of ad nauseum.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's where, so I've been running Crepevine for a while. We've done some work for Triumph. Like we did some document processing stuff for Triumph. And my brother was CEO of Triumph. So he bought the Triumph as a failed bank from the FDIC in 2008 or 9. It used to be called Equity Bank. And rebranded it Triumph, raised $50 million here in Dallas when he had these people had no business giving him. He was against the odds. He found a way, scratched and clawed to raise that money to buy that failed bank, and turned what's really cool is like stories of life, like stories of what are life giving. Like that thing was dead. Equity Bank was dead. There was rotten. There was no value in it, and to breathe life into something that is now, touches like 1 out of every 2 payment transactions in freight brokerage. It's insane. The story of what Triumph has become, and
it's inspiring.
So, yeah. Oh yeah. I'm so proud of him as a brother, and like just so I look up to him all the time.
It's interesting you use the term in breathe life, because I'm pretty sure the literal definition of the word inspire is to breathe life into something.
I didn't know that.
Up. I don't think I did, but I think
we're
that
taking
is.
It.
No, the reason I know this is because I did this kind of workshop with my YPO group, my forum group. We were looking for our purpose. And they brought in a couple of experts, and we were really trying to understand our individual why, our individual purpose. And the first step was to look at moments of inspiration in our life. So to like really dial back into our memories and think about like what were moments that we were truly inspired. And the path to understanding your why or your purpose is to start with moments of inspiration. And when you look back, there's not hundreds of times in your life where you've been inspired, but there are a few. One of mine was when I saw Brene Brown's TED Talk on the power of vulnerability. And it's interesting that like I just remember that distinctly, and that was like kind of the example we used in trying to figure out my why. But what we eventually came to, he's like, the reason you look for points of inspiration is because the word inspire literally means to breathe life into something.
Wow.
And what these moments of inspiration do for you is they breathe life into you. They give you that life that gets you excited and motivated and wanting to go do the next thing. So yeah, I keyed in on that. It seems like your brother is an inspiration to you in a lot of ways. I mean, how much older is he than you?
I love what you just shared there. Yeah, he's 10 years older. He is. So he graduated high school when I was in second grade. So we didn't get a ton of time at bats together. But I always looked up to him, and he's the one that told me I should be an investment banker. He was a lawyer, and he's like, man, I should have been an investment banker. Don't make my mistake. Go be an investment banker instead of a lawyer. So, yeah. And then when I learned to code, he was like, "Yeah, you're kind of a nerd of the family. You should learn how to code and do that." So, yeah, we've really developed our relationship after college, and as kind of men, and his family is so dear to our family. Like he's got three kids who are almost exactly 10 years apart from my three kids, and they, we're very close, and he's a great friend.
Well, at some point you went to go work for him, right? I mean, that was.
Oh yeah.
So to walk us through that. So Crepevine, like get us from Crepevine to Triumph, and kind of talk about how your brother played into that. Give us that aspect of your story.
Yeah, and so in 2018 or 2017 at Crepevine, I got real into blockchain. Like real kind of like not to the like level of like rabbit hole down the whole conspiracies, but I loved the intellectual challenge of like understanding how they had created that was just baffling to me. And it wasn't a single man. There's no way. Like if conspiracy theories, it was some, in my opinion, some state organization because they had advanced knowledge of distributed systems and cryptography. And anyways, I got real into it and real down the rabbit hole. And so at that time, Craig Fuller was like launching
Bida.
Craig Fuller, Bida, yeah. And I knew Craig through Steve Hausman, Steve Hausman had introduced Craig to me to maybe help him build the Freight Futures Exchange, because have Crepevine build that. And Craig ultimately didn't end up hiring us, which I should hold that over his head more. But I saw him post on LinkedIn. I was like, blockchain, trucking, like that sounds awesome. And so naturally Triumph was very involved in that process because, Steve was how I found trucking. I really was more interacting with Steve Hausman, who's a mentor of mine and now the chairman of the board of Highway. And so I kind of got into all that flow of motion of Bida and trucking and blockchain, and built a like prototype on how you would submit an invoice for payment. It would get audited and get paid for the Bida thing in the fall of that 2017. And it was really cool because, Aaron's like, you want to build a product. Hey, we got this thing called Triumph Pay. We've got a few customers on it. If you break it, it's not going to be the end of the world, but like you want to, he's like, so you want to take a shot downfield? Like here's an opportunity to go do this. And I loved it because it was a chance to run a product. I wouldn't have to, it was like you get a salary. I had 3 kids at that point, or 2, almost 3 kids. And so healthcare and all that be taken care of, and get to do it with Steve and Aaron. It sounded really awesome. It was awesome. It didn't just sound awesome. It became awesome. And so I, showed up. I remember we had the dinner. It was right over here when he finally made the offer, the formal offer. We knocked out the terms. And so in 2018, I sold my stake in Crepevine to John Harlan and went to work at Triumph Pay. And and when I say at Triumph Pay, there was no Triumph Pay. It was like inside of the factoring business. There was, we didn't even have Triumph Pay email addresses. And so that was kind of the first order of business. We need our Triumph Pay email addresses. But
so for the audience that maybe isn't as attuned to what Triumph is, Triumph Pay, give a little bit more high level context of what Triumph was doing, and then what specifically you were going to build within Triumph at Triumph Pay.
Yeah, so Triumph is a publicly traded bank here in Dallas. They are the second largest factoring company, Triumph Business Capital, now called, I believe, Triumph Financial. And so they're the second largest factoring company in trucking. There's about 300 factoring companies in trucking. They would touch about 50% of all freight bills that are paid by freight brokers. And the top 10 factors represent 60, 70% of the market, of the factoring market. And Triumph is number 2. They had started a product called Triumph Pay because they knew factors were driving brokers crazy because they're calling all the time to verify invoices. They're filing on bonds. It was a goat rodeo. Processing notice of assignments. They just send out these blast notice of assignments. And so Triumph Pay was designed by Steve Hausman as a way to go and solve the problem for brokers, make the carrier payments on behalf of brokers. And the nuance, like, the timing was really, really important for that business because in 2010, no broker would have ever done it because factoring was only 10, 20% of their carrier portfolio. And they would have never given up control of their carrier payments. But when I showed up in 2018, factoring was almost 1 out of every 2 invoices. Some brokers were paying 70% to factoring companies. And so we were like, hey, you've already outsourced carrier payments. You just outsourced it to someone you don't have a contract with. Outsource it to Triumph Pay. You've outsourced it to the factoring companies, essentially, paying the carrier. And so we say, hey, contract with Triumph Pay. We'll take care of all the NOA processing. We'll make sure the carrier gets paid correctly. And we'll provide them a nice portal where they can come in and look at all their freight bills. And it took off.
What do you think drove that massive increase in that kind of percent of the revenue that was going through factors from 2010 to 2018? Like, why such a big jump?
The original cause was your father.
My father.
Yeah. I mean,
what did he do?
Backhaulers, right? Like, so if you look at deregulation, right? The first intermediary business the industry that arose was freight brokers. And so as freight brokers took market share, as that idea, and so you're part of the problem too, because you MOLO, right? Like you took so much share of for-hire transportation and pushed it into intermediaries. What that allowed to happen, there's 2 effects. It allowed smaller carriers to access more freight. So you have small carriers, 5 trucks or less, hauling freight for Anheuser-Busch, Coca-Cola, that they would have never had access to that freight for the consolidation effect of the intermediaries. The secondary effect is they ended up working with a lot more customers. Back in the 90s, carriers would have a handful of customers, maybe 5, and they would work with the same customer. So billing's a lot easier when you got 5 customers. Your wife or your aunt can manage that more easily. But then when you're talking about some of these carriers were working with 100 brokers a year, and they make sure they weren't going to get ripped off, like they weren't going to get paid, right? Because there's a lot of failures in the small tail of the broker market. That's where factoring took off. Is like they outsourced basically their billing department, the carriers did, to these factoring companies who would get them cash faster and also manage all the craziness of billing all these people.
Yep. Okay.
That's my opinion. That's my opinion.
Well, I'm picking up what you're putting down. So you get involved in Triumph Pay, you take over as CEO. What was that like, building that business out as part of a publicly traded bank? So you went from kind of your first foray into entrepreneurship, you're running your own show. It's chaos. There's just all this different stuff going on, and now you're making the move to it's kind of entrepreneurial still, but it's within a bigger publicly traded bank situation. That's challenging.
Yeah. I mean, they should have fired me a lot. Like, there's a lot of times I should have been like, okay, you've crossed the line. Like, we're done. But basically what happened was they created this box, and they put padded walls around the box, and they let me live in the box and just make sure that I didn't blow up outside the box. Because we ran hot, and like, to the banking regulators, if they ever hear this, like, Gail Lehman made sure everything was audited and done in the control environment. It was all done correctly. But Gail Lehman was the COO at Triumph, and I love that woman. Like, she is the czar of operations and audit and control at Triumph at the time. And so, like, if you messed up, like, Gail made sure that you did not mess up over there. And she wasn't sure of me at first, But then she kind of like, we got this great working relationship where I figured out the things I needed to ask for permission versus the things that I could ask her for forgiveness. And there was this very clear line. That was the subtlety of like our relationship. But they gave me a ton of runway and let me run really fast and have a lot of autonomy until it got to the point that it became material. And then that's when it was material amount of payments, it was material amount of impact to earnings. And then it was like, hey, like, y'all have to grow up a little bit. Like, you can't just go out and say yes to everything and make changes to the API or we've got to have a little more structure and process. So they let me run hot for like 2 or 3 years until it was like, okay, there's $10 billion of payments flowing through this. Like, we need a lot more control,
a little more process and control. Yeah. I'm curious why we haven't seen more advancement in factoring through technology, right? Because like to this day, you've still got brokers getting hundreds of calls a day from factors verifying payment amounts and whatnot. Like, how has that not been automated or digitized? Like, what am I missing there?
Well, that's what TriumphPay did. So that was like TriumphPay. Like we would make the phone call stop. We gave them a portal to verify invoices. We actually gave them an API where they could submit paperwork and verify invoices. So it's changed. It's gotten better. I would say it's gotten better. What makes it hard and slow to adopt? Innovation can at times move slowly in transportation because it's a low margin, capital intensive business. People don't have a bunch of time just to sit around and be innovative. Like how many employees at Google and these software companies that can just sit around in innovation departments and think about cool things, and they have a lot more margin to spend dollars and time on that. Whereas a trucking company or a brokerage, you're dealing with pennies. Like, you don't have time to just sit around and think about, well, what are the great ways we can make this business better, because you're in the grind. And I think that tends to make innovation go a little more slowly in our industry. Again, that's a hot sports opinion.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, I'm curious about just factoring is such an interesting business to me. It seems similar to brokerage, where you've got a couple really big players and then there's a super long tail. Yes. And it's service oriented. But like one of the things I was always curious about is like, what can you sell beyond price in factoring? I mean, what, like as you're trying to differentiate as a factor, it's like, the rate that I'm charging you is the most important thing, I would argue. But like, what else are we selling beyond that? Like, what's the service in factoring look like?
Oh man, this is good stuff, man. This is deep water. So yes, in all financial services, here's the dirty little secret. Everything they're selling is green, flat, and looks like everyone else's. It's money, right? You're selling money. And so if you look at the macro trends in factoring, it's a perfectly competitive market. So you can see that in that when price in factoring has declined like 50-60% over the last 15 years. Like Triumph tracks this very closely, and it has dropped dramatically. And it's not correlated to interest rates. Like, interest rates are flat for a long period, and the factoring rates kept coming down. So they 100% are competing on price. The other thing you see in perfectly competitive markets is the consolidation is driven by at different elements. And one of those elements is a strategic sourcing channel. So in a perfectly competitive market, one way that you drive consolidation is have a unique advantage on how you source customers. So when you look at the top 10 factoring companies, they all kind of have something that gave them a strategic sourcing advantage. Either they were tied to a broker or a load board or a fuel stop, travel stop, or a truck stop. They had something that they could get in front of in the face of carriers that wasn't just buying Google AdWords to drive consolidation.
Yep.
To your point, though, what ultimately looks like in my opinion, I speak like I'm a professor, but like what happens in a long tail, like long-term, perfectly competitive market is the cost will move down as to the long-run average cost of technology. And that, I think you're seeing today, is the lifestyle business factors is becoming harder to sell on. Hey, I'm your guy. Some carriers want that. You have one guy and you call him, and he not only does your invoices, he funds your bank account, and he'll help you find loads sometimes. He'll help you. He'll log into your DAT He'll let your
Yeah,
dog
that's
out
the
like
go.
that.
That's the go above and beyond sale that tends to work in trucking with owner operators too. So I'm picking up what you're putting down there.
Yeah, but that's not scalable, and that's not the broader market.
Yep,
So
I agree.
yeah, we're seeing consolidation in factoring. And the other things about perfectly competitive markets is you see the complementary offerings being brought in. So tires, fuel, maintenance, all that is now kind of standard for all the large factors. They have these rewards programs, insurance, like all the things that a carrier need, equipment finance. They're tying all that together to create a consolidated offering so that it becomes more difficult to just compete on 1.5% discount rates, right? The price.
Yep.
Yep.
It's because I remember just so much thinking about this when we were trying to think of how to differentiate at Molo. And there was a point where we were going to go down the rewards loyalty program type deal and ultimately didn't see enough benefit in it. But like, you just spend so much time thinking of how to differentiate. And I've now thought about factoring. And I'm like, man, it feels very similar to what we're going through in brokerage. And I think one specific thing that is interesting to me, you often hear people talk about the market and how it's moving, and it's always cyclical. Everything's cyclical, and just trust that if it's gone up for the last year and a half, it'll come down because that's what has always happened. The interesting thing to me, though, is like we don't have that much history on our side that shows us like a true long-term trend. We've got about 40 years dating back to deregulation. And you've seen a couple things now happen in the last 10 years that are taking us well beyond anything. Like the impact could be substantial. One is the technology that's at play, and two is the amount of competition. And we might actually just be seeing the market mature to a point where the competition is at its peak. The technology is having as substantial of an impact as it can. And my concern is, does that mean we're going to hit a unsustainable margin level for everyone, or for at least a lot of players that will drive out some more competition? I don't know. I mean, these are things I don't have the answers to, but they're things I'm curious about. I don't know if you have any thoughts there.
Oh, I'm loving that, dude. That was good. That's good stuff.
Maybe.
No, it is.
We don't know.
I mean, yeah. I mean, in like to even keep going on what you're saying and focus in on 20. So I just talk about 2018, 19, the last 4 years. I mean, you have up and down markets that are highly volatile because of exogenous shocks to the systems and tariffs and ELD mandates and COVID shifting spending from services to goods. Like, unless like that's not a trend. That's a microcosm. Like that's a little period in the broader trend, man. So, okay, man, that is good. And when you think about like freight brokerage, Andrew, like there's obviously drive-in, long over the road. Like there's that component that's probably a large portion of the total dollar spent in freight brokerage. How do you think about the segmentation of people that focus on heavy haul or temperature controlled or flatbed? Like in your mind, when you look and see freight brokerage, how big are those buckets? Those other segments, I guess.
So I think they're big enough to build your own little business in and be successful. I mean, we were heavy on refrigerated early on. I mean, my first foray into brokerage as a sales guy was refrigerated. So I worked with produce brokers initially, and then the first big account I landed at Coyote was Rich Products, which was one of the largest privately owned frozen food companies in the country. So I just got my I dipped my toe in the refrigerated waters early. And I think my overarching concern that I just kind of voiced is we're reaching a point of competition that is making the industry as close to commoditized, and it's becoming really challenging to win on, I'm your guy, I'll go above and beyond on behalf of you, and that's why you'll be loyal to me forever. That's a really hard business to scale. So when I think about like if I were to do it again, whether I was going to start a brokerage or start a factoring company or whatever it was, let's key in on brokerage here because that's, I guess, my forte. I do think if it's in 3 years and 5 years, like there's that part of me that worries we're actually getting to a point where it's going to be too challenging for someone new to come in and make a big splash because there's just not anything that different about what they're doing. I think that's more true with the dry van traditional one pick, one stop, live load, live unload. The freight that everybody wants and is easiest to move, I think is going to be more and more challenging to start a new business and grow with. You get into refrigerated, especially with where insurance costs are going, like that, the more people are going to shy away from these things because of changes happening, the more that's where the business probably has a chance to survive and grow and thrive is if you can create the right solutions for that. So one element is to say, I'm going to go start a brokerage and focus on oversized, overdimensional, and refrigerated. Like the things that are way more challenging to move take longer to figure out. But once I do, it's a stickier relationship because the next guy is not working as hard to figure it out, and he's going to struggle to find the right solution. Or it's going and building the solution through technology, through a highway type product to solve for some of these challenges, and sell that en masse to all the players that are trying to play the game.
I love this. This is so fun. This is such a great, okay. There's not a whole lot of other, there's not a ton of other markets where you have service providers in commodities, right? There's service providers in commodities. There's not a whole bunch of others. I mean, there's brokers and livestock and grain and things like that. But like this idea of being a service provider on top of a commodity, but a commodity that has to physically move out in the world, like it's interesting. There's not a whole lot of other examples of, I think, an industry's going through the growth cycle and the maturation cycle, like we're talking about with freight brokerage. And but your point about the technology and the live unload, load, drive in, like that business, man, you can see it already. Like Convoy made a shot at it, right? They tried, but the low cost competitor doesn't look like Convoy. It looks like Walmart, right? There's no flash, there's no like pizzazz. It's like, we're going to grind it out, beat it down. I mean, it's Robinson, right? Like that's what they're good at. Like that's their business. They grind it out, get the low mark. They have the scale and just, it's not flashy. The low cost provider is not flashy.
No, right? I mean, it's hard to look at Convoy and feel like you've come to one, like the overarching lesson learned, because there's so many elements to what they did. They did go for the flash and the pizzazz, and like they spent all the money on marketing they could. And there's no denying they came up with some pretty interesting marketing, I don't want to say shticks, but they kind of were marketing shticks. At the same time, they invested a ton of money in building out products that were true solutions. And then the last piece is they tried to be the service provider at the same time. So while you're building out all of these tools that I think are creating true innovation, you're also building out the marketing shtick type stuff. But at the end of the day, you are owning the service provided on all of this. I think one of the biggest challenges for them or mistakes they made was innovating at the expense of the customer and being willing to try new things that had significant impact to a customer in the moment and create a negative reputation. I think reputation is way more important than people give credit to in this industry, because while it's a huge industry, it is quite small. Everybody knows everybody. The shippers all talk to each other, and if you screw over one, you might as well screw over 100. And I think that happened. I think that they created a really interesting, the Convoy Go program, I think was really interesting. I think the power only, the trailer management tool they were building, I think had potential to be a big success in the industry, or at least be a solution in the industry. But I think the fact that they were creating all these tools while operating them under the Convoy umbrella created a negative image for them amongst a lot of companies. I mean, I'll never forget for myself personally, this was a conversation with one of the largest shippers in the country, and it was the first time I had met this individual. And the first question he asked me was if I was a digital broker. And the reason he asked, because if his follow-up was when I said, no, I don't consider ourselves that, he said, good, because I've had such a bad experience with them that I'm turned off on the concept. So to me, it's like, it's hard to look at Convoy as like the example of anything, because there's just so much there. And I think you have to break down each part individually and recognize, like, yes, there is room to innovate in the industry. There are areas that you can build tools that other brokers have not figured out yet. Listen, no broker has effectively at scale figured out how to do drop trailer. Like in a way, in a way that is a true solution for the shipper. And bear in mind, like I had shippers who, if I told them, they gave me a lane from upstate New York to California and another lane from upstate New York to Georgia, and they wanted drops on both, and it wasn't acceptable that I said, okay, the carrier with the green trucks or green trailers that says America, those are going to California, and the carrier with the yellow trailers that say USA, those are going to Georgia. Load those. That seems like a fairly simple plan, and the shipper couldn't handle it. They wanted, okay, you're SCAC, you have one SCAC, so if we load the yellow trailer going to California, that's on you to figure out how to navigate. So,
my.
What I'm getting at is there are still solutions out there that people can create that can work for shippers. I mean, that at the end of the day, that's another interesting element to this is that the buyer, the shipper, so to speak, is a unique player, and their systems are the only systems that matter to create a solution for them. So you might come up with a drop solution that you think is going to work, but if a shipper won't change the way that they operate to accept that it doesn't work for them. And there are thousands and thousands of unique shippers out there who pay their own bills, and they are their own. It's their game. You got to figure out how to play it.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. No, I love it. It comes out of what the shippers wants and what they're willing to do. It doesn't matter what all this beautiful. Okay, you know what I'm tired of? I'm tired of these guys coming into the industry and say the industry's so broken. The tech guys that don't it's not broken. Listen. If you really, really, really need the truck to show up on time, and you really, really, really need it to deliver on time, you need that all day, every day. Yeah, Ruan will sell you dedicated freight. Like that there's a price point. But if you don't want to pay that price point, it's just you're buying a different price point. And welcome. And yes, absolutely, we talk about service and on time. Yes, it doesn't matter what stratification of the quality spectrum you're on. You're always trying to increase your service level to gain more price, right? But it's not broken. It's just different. You're buying a different product. There's a dedicated product out there. It's just expensive.
Yeah, so I agree with you. The industry is not broken. The industry has its challenges, and people do come into it. They're thinking that what their business school taught them, like the first thing is the problem. Like, what's the problem? The industry is broken. It's like people don't give brokers enough credit for, frankly, how exceptional they can be at solving problems and just, frankly, getting shit done. And even if it's through brute force and grit and grind to figure out how to get it done, brokers tend to be pretty exceptional when they want to be at solving problems and getting trucks moved and getting loads delivered when they need to, despite a ton of adverse situations. So I'm aligned with you there. So yeah, we're kind of jumping and jiving all over the place here. I'm gonna bring us back on a path that I think makes sense here. So we've started dabbling in kind of solutions for the industry. Let's make the final jump from your second act to your third act, from TriumphPay CEO to Highway. Let's get on the highway here. So, how did Highway come to be? How did that idea come about? You were at TriumphPay. Things were going swimmingly, as far as I know. Things were going well. What inspired the change? What breathed life into that change?
Yeah, as much as like my brother's amazing and Gail Lehman and Adam Nelson, all those people are amazing, and I have so much respect for them. I'm not built to operate in a publicly traded bank, and once TriumphPay hit a materiality threshold, like they needed somebody else. Like I wasn't the right fit for them anymore. I ran too hot, and the nepotism thing with my brother, like he was getting beat up by investors all the time. Why is your younger brother running TriumphPay? Well, and Aaron would be like, were you around the last 4 years? And it just didn't matter. And then I was probably one of the first, I hate using the word I and talking about seeing things, but the fraud, I started to see it earlier, probably than most people, because I was running TriumphPay and we tracked this thing called reversal rate. So in a payments business, your ability to hit it right the first time is so important, because you're dealing very low margins. You can't touch every payment. And so our reversal rate I think we targeted it to be around 20 basis points, 20, 30 basis points, meaning like 99.7% of payments the first time they went out, they never came back, meaning like the check was, couldn't be delivered, whatever. And I started to see that reversal rate go up, and we'd had so much success for so long making it go down, and it started to go up. And I started asking questions like, hey, why is this going up? I don't understand. Like what's causing it? And then as I went into it, I started to see all these requests for stop payments from brokers. And I started to ask, like, why are we stop paying a carrier on a broker's request if they've already told us that the load was delivered and whatever? And that led me down the path of like, okay, they're double brokered it. The broker just found out they double brokered it and wants to hold the payments on all these things. And I was like, all right, well, let's go upstream and figure out what's going on here, right? Like, how did we get to this point? Why are you hiring someone that's not really the carrier, not really a carrier? And like when I went upstream, I saw like just there was this gap, right? Okay, so freight brokerage is 40 years old. It's so fun talking to you because like you get it, right? Like banking's been around for thousands of years. And so like people have been trying to rip off banks for thousands of years. So we got a lot of practice in banking and like knowing like how you're going to try and steal money from us, right? There's check kiting is check kiting. It's been around for a long time. But in freight brokerage, it's so new. Like these things like KYC, know your customer, right? Or we talk about know your carrier, doesn't exist. And we had carrier 4-in-1 and, I don't want to mention competitors' names. We had products out there that you could use, but they weren't like automated and they weren't looking at it in a digital sense. So my background's in building software. And so all I did, it wasn't genius. It's just I had a background in building products for, I had a background in network security. And so you called your carrier network a network. So all I did was put 2 and 2 together and take the principles of identity and access management for networks and apply it to your carrier network. So like authentication, authorization, capability management, and just did that in a way that made sense, that was very tailored to how a freight broker, how you think about carriers. And so people like ask all the time, like, what's the magic bullet of Highway? I'm like, it's not. It's just, it was built to do access management in a way for a freight broker that like no one ever did that. It just didn't exist. And so, man, like it's been such a awesome ride. And we've had so many wonderful people help us along the way. Like we were so blessed to be where we are. God has provided us amazing opportunity and amazing people to help us along this journey, and so many early adopters and so many people that invested in what we were doing and believed in us. And it's just, I don't know why it's had so much success, but I know there's a purpose for it. God has a purpose for it and for us. And so I'm just trying to be respectful of that.
I appreciate that answer. So the business started in late 2018?
No,
I'm sorry. 2021. 2022. Sorry.
Yep.
I got my times messed up with Triumph. So, it's late COVID. Like when you realized, okay, this is an idea, like you told your brother, like, hey, listen, I'm tired of the nepotism crap. I'm tired of the walls.
That's not how I said it, Andrew. That's not how I said it, Andrew. That's not how you deliver that.
All right, I'll stop putting words in your mouth. Like you saw this opportunity and you said, let's go. What did that look like to get started? I mean, walk me through how the Highway team came to be and all that.
So I'm a developer, so like the first thing I did is I kind of had a cooling down period with Triumph, where like they needed me to like just be quiet, like just be respectful of the process, right? It's a public company and you have an executive leaving, and so I just wrote code for like months. In the first part of 2022, I just wrote like all day, every day, grinding, building. Because the benefit of being a technical founder as a developer is like I have an idea and I know what I want. Like all I have to do is type it. I don't have to like tell someone else, and they, like there's no relay, there's no lost in translation trying to tell a developer what we want to build. It's just like, let's go. And I'm passionate about it because this is my idea. So I was writing code, 100 hours a week, easy, just because I loved it. It was like I was on fire for it. And
you felt yourself literally creating a solution to a problem. Yeah. So I get why that would be an inspiring thing to be doing.
Yeah, and I'm also just like always like super competitive, And so like, I'm just mad at everyone. I just want to win. Like I just want to go win and win big. And so I saw the window was open because of some things that had happened with some incumbents. And like, I knew there was this window, and I knew if I didn't bust through it, someone else would, because it was wide open and people weren't getting great service, and there's a lot of fraud just everywhere. And so my first hire was Brittany. So we got the team back together, and it was awesome. So she's our COO. And I was like, hey, Brittany, we're going to have to go get all these insurance certificates. It's this really nasty, hard problem that's not fun to scale and involves managing a bunch of people. Do you want to do it? And she's like, yeah, I got it. And so like, she has just taken that on full steam, manages now. I think there's like 120 people under her team.
Just for insurance certificates?
No, carrier support, customer support, all different. Dude, okay, my passion is if you call us, we answer. I do not. We are never like the whole. Like when I interview people that around the operations side, I've said, hey, if your mantra is like, hey, how do we automate this to get people to stop calling us to save money to add EBITDA margin? Like, not only do I not want you, you have zero chance of ever making it here. Like, if you call us, we're going to answer. And like, my goal is to have us answering on the third ring, and I think we're at like 95% SLA on that. So we have 24/7, 365 carrier support across 3 different time zones, because we just want, if you call us, we answer. And like, and like a broker, like what we do is so integral to to their business. They can't wait for us to respond to an email. They need to call. And like, that's what we want to provide. So we're always going to be heavy staff.
You understand the time sensitivity of your own customer, because if a broker's trying to book a load last minute and they're putting a potential risky, they're not sure carrier on it, the last thing they want is a snag on their vendor who's just not answering to give them the information so they can't make an informed decision.
Your mouth to God's ear, man. That's it. That is it. And so I tell my team, we're not a software company. We're a service provider. We're a service provider to service providers that have a high level of standard of responsiveness to their customers. So guess what? We're going to be very, very responsive. It's in our cultural tenets, be responsive. We track our SLAs on how fast we respond to carriers and brokers. And it's hard because the bad guys lie. They're lying to you. And like when they're trying to get in your network on a Friday afternoon and steal that load, they're going to tell you everything they can to get you to believe them. And so it is hard because we have to, like, our operations people don't have the ability to fix things. Like, it's not like when I say that, like, they can't be socially engineered. Like, the carrier can't sweet talk them into letting them pass. Like, and the bad guys finally figure this out and stop trying, but like, they can't, talk their way out of it on a Friday afternoon load. But that's really hard for the carrier sales rep who, this guy's ran this load for me a lot, or whatever. But hey, man, he has one truck on a scheduled auto and he's on 3 other loads for 3 other brokers. Like, it's not real. What she's telling you is not real.
Yep. What's the best example that you've seen, or best or worst, depending on how you're thinking about it, of how, like, the most creative way that you've seen carriers come in and try to, cheat the system to get a load from a broker?
Yeah, so I don't like to call them carriers. They're call them like they're fake carriers. So I try to use that. No, I learned that 6 months ago because
a scammer.
Scammer. Yeah, they're not a real carrier. Because I was saying that in front of a carrier and they were like, whoa, watch your language, boy. And he was a big guy, so I watched my language. But the moment that I thought, we were running the score up on these guys pretty well in the first 6 months, and then they hit us back, and they found a way. Like, and we don't talk publicly about vectors, but I would talk about this one because it's when I realized that I was playing against some like really, really good people, like smart. Like, when I say good, I mean
not
smart.
Good people.
Scammers.
You mean really strong scammers?
Freaking! It was really, really smart. So what they did, we get a call. Hey, there's a stolen load. It's let's just say the name was William@gmail.com. And I'm like, okay, well, let's investigate. Like, where did you send the rate con? Oh, they send the email and it's missing an I in William. And I'm like, guys, like, how many times? Like, just how to use the Outlook plugin. And then we go look, and that's the census contact information. And we're like, oh, well, like, maybe it was just recently changed because we have, like, the census data now at this point is just garbage because of all the fraud there. No, it's been that way for 2 years. And now I'm like in a loop. And so the guy's in Texas, the carrier's in Texas. So I call him and I'm like, hey man, I'm going to come drive to your house. And like, we're going to have this conversation because you're telling me that you didn't get this rate con. Someone stole your identity. But dude, this is the email that's been there for 2 years. And, like, he's like, I don't know who put that. I don't know anything. He said, that's not me. His real email does have the I in it. And so I'm like looking up, and then there's ways we have to look at relatively how old an email is. And I went and looked at that one, the one without the I, the one that stole the load, and it was like 3 weeks old. And I was like, okay, now I know what they did. And I'm like, what they did is they bought the data from the government, and they went and looked for typos in emails. And then they went and registered that email. They found that guy had
someone typoed on the government site, and this person went out of their way to search for typoed emails on the government site, then created the actual email, used the email to steal a load, knowing that when you guys went to check the government site, you would see a correct email and it wouldn't be flagged.
In the SQL query to do that is really hard. Like it's not like a 1 year old, not a 1 year experience, 3 year experience. That's a guy that's got 5-10 years. I know what he did, and it's good stuff. Like so that's when I knew like
this is like a legitimate high stakes game where these to frame it again for everyone who's listening, like Highway wasn't around more than a year. Let's say a year and a half ago, Highway didn't exist, and these scammers it wasn't that challenging for them to figure out how to scam a broker. Highway comes into the fold, and over the course of, say, 6 months, all of a sudden these scammers are like, wow, this has gotten harder for us. We need to change our ways. And it's kind of a game of battleship, like back and forth. Like Highway created a system to stop the 5 ways you were stealing loads. And they say, well, we're not quitting, so we're going to figure out a 6th. And that's when this exact example comes into the fold. So this isn't exactly like for you can just create a product. That product works, and for the next 10 years, you're going to ride off into the sunset banking new customers just because the product is great. This is like every day the scammers are going back to work to figure out how to best you, and you need to keep your arms up and keep creating new ways to detect their scammingness. Am I getting this right?
You're exactly right. Like we never sleep. Like it's never good enough. They're always going to be trying to find ways in. And every time there's something, either something happens, like they've gotten, like we're not perfect. It helps a ton, and we think we reduce it by 98, 99% the fraud in your network. But when they get through, like I'm involved, and I want to know how, and I go look at all the details, and I'm looking at their digital activity. I'm looking at everything I can to see if I can figure out how they did it. And I tell my team, we are bound by our responsibility to this community that every time something happens and they get through, we have to at least release one code change to fix it, to fix some way, a portion of it. We may not solve it completely, but we're going to hold ourselves that we are bound that something has to change, because we're not going to let these guys get comfortable that we're just going to let them keep hitting us the same way. And they don't have task force. They don't have committees. They're not sitting around talking about they're agile. They're trying all new things every time, all the time. And so like we have to be the same way. We have to be hyper responsive. And I think we surprised them a few times how fast we respond. Like there was one, we saw them hit one way in the morning and we had it patched by the afternoon. And I think we surprised them a little bit on how fast we came, because they're used to not like, fast a response. So I kind of enjoy punching them back when we get them, and then when we hit them, that's kind of fun, to get some wins.
Oh yeah, for sure. So the business has been around for not even 2 years yet. How many employees are at Highway?
We have about 140, 130 people total.
Okay.
Yep.
And most of those report up through Brittany, your wife?
Yeah, we have a big operations staff, and then, we got about 30, 40-ish that are, product development, sales, marketing, those type things. We actually don't have anyone in marketing. I don't know why I said that. I make Caney do the marketing, and he does a pretty good job.
Marketing? Yeah,
Caney's the marketing.
Mike gets it.
The ginger, right? He shows up well on LinkedIn, the redhead.
Easy to see him and notice him.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, you are a technical founder, so you've got the chops to build out the systems yourself, and we all have weaknesses. So I'm the opposite. I don't have the technical chops. So, if you were to ask me about something that I'm not great at, that would be my answer. I'm curious for your perspective because you seem to have a decent knack for the people skills in conjunction with the technical stuff. So what's your biggest challenge as a CEO? What's your weak spot or thing that you're needing to work on the most?
Operations. Oof. They keep me as far away as possible from anything related to control environment, operations. I'm not
because
great at
is this a
sales.
situation where like if you get added to an email that's operationally, you're going to just cause you come in like a bull in a china shop causing chaos?
It's so bad, and it's so predictably bad every time too. Like Brittany's just like, can we just not? Can you just not
Let
respond
this
to
one
this? Like,
go. We'll
yeah, like
deal with it the right way.
yeah, and it's just like anything. Yeah, so they rightfully keep me out of all things operations related, implementations, integrating things. I oversimplify integrations, API integrations. I want to go too fast and like be like, well, it's just really simple. Just do these three things, and that's never the answer. It's just never the answer. You need to think about exceptions. You need to think about data structure. You need to think about what do we do when it goes wrong? What do they think that piece of data means, and what does it really mean? And you got to be patient, and I'm bad. And so like McLeod, like God bless Dacia Gullidge, like I have tried to I'm like, Dacia, it's just really simple. Just do this. And she's like, Jordan, if we're going to roll this out to 400 brokers, like I'm going to make sure it works for 400 brokers for more than one time. So I'm bad at sales. Like I'm a terrible price. Caney has revoked, like it's a joke, but like really the board revoked my ability to price deals. Like I don't have the authority to quote price anymore because I'm so bad at it because I like just want people to use it. And so like they all
You're
tug at
too
my
nice.
heartstrings. No, I'm like, dude, if you'll use it, dude, just pay us what you can, like, and Katie's like, shut up, Jordan, like stop talking. And so they legitimately like kind of like as a joke revoked my authority to quote price. So I think John Lauer at Geodis was the last one that I like quoted a price to. So that's it.
So, I'm trying to get to a lesson here for our listeners because I feel the same way. And it's like you have these relationships with your executives where there's a lot of trust and we understand each other's flaws and the things we're not good at. And so kind of how the way you said it, it's like we just have kind of the joke, they kick me out, I can't price anymore. But I am curious, like, to try to put this in a way that's meaningful or a lesson for listeners or, aspiring leaders or those who at least can understand their flaws. Like, how have you really either worked to improve the flaws or just created the right boundaries or delegated effectively to get the most out of yourself and those around you without kind of running into each other?
Yeah, it's so scary hiring C-suite. And it's so scary, bro. I mean, brother, like you walked it. Hiring those expensive people, like Caney, it was scary. The idea of how much it took to get him to come on board, and then handing over the sales element of like he's going to be out represent my brand. Like I knew him. I mean, I knew him and I had a respect for him, but I didn't know him. I didn't like know him as well as I know him now. That's very scary, and I'd recommend mentors, people that can speak into it for you when you're high. Like we have a thing at Highway where every level they have to have people above you look into it. So when I hire C-suite, they all interview with the board. So all the board members will talk to every C-suite hire. And then the kind of the level down, like we have leadership team look at our SVP level and it just provides accountability and make sure we're all on the same page. It helps us with culture carriers. Like we talk about culture carriers here, and that really helps us make sure like, hey, is this someone I could sit next to on a long flight and enjoy talking to them? Because that's important. Like, do we enjoy being together? Okay. If I was talking to a young 25-year-old who wanted to go start their own thing, I would say you have to be able to articulate to yourself truthfully why you're uniquely positioned to win. And so I talk to a lot of young guys that come and pitch me ideas. And it's like, that's great. Like, that's great. You should build I don't know. Like one guy came to me, he's like, I had the idea for Uber Eats. I'm like, that means nothing. Like the idea, you were not uniquely positioned to win. Like you had no shot, right? Like that business required test capital. So how are you uniquely positioned to win? And then the second thing I would say is, are you passionate about it? Like, are you really ready to make this your all in all day, every day? If you're not willing to quit your day job to go do it, then it's not you don't believe in it enough. And the world is 0 for 1 million in attempts to start something while keeping your day job and make this successful. Like that doesn't, if you don't want to go all in, then like stop talking about it. Like,
I think that's great. I'm curious, like the passion piece is interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what do you need to be passionate about? Like, do you need to be passionate at Highway? Do you need to be passionate about carrier identity? Or is it passion about solving real problems that impact people's businesses and lives? Because like, those are two different things. And I don't know a ton of people who are really passionate about carrier identity. Just like, I don't know a ton of people that were passionate about moving truckloads around, but we were able to build a passionate team. So I'm curious if you could dive into that a little bit for more color.
Oh, yeah. So I love this industry. I love freight brokerage. And I kind of like it's a shtick now that I've never covered a load. Like all my friends like to make fun of me that I've never covered a load or whatever. Now it's like a thing. Like I'm not going to. Like I never will. Because like I just want it to be my thing, right? But I love this industry because you all are like the frontier. It's like the last frontier of a brokered market, right? Like it's the last frontier. And I love how fast it moves. I love how you all, the first time first time you meet someone, you don't trust them. Brokers is just like this thing. You're like, everything you're telling me, you're lying. And like, so I would go still try and pay. And I'd be like, they hate me. And then Will Kerr was like, no, like you just need to show up 2 more times. And then by the third time, they'll be like, in nice blood brothers. Yeah. And then this community, once you're accepted in and you prove value and you prove trustworthy and you do what you say you're going to do, like this community is loyal to a fault, like loyal to almost giving too much grace at times. So I just fell deeply in love with it. And so I have so many friends that I care about. And this industry has made Brittany and I's career and family. Like it's been so good to us that when something happens to one of my friends, like it's the passion for like defense. Like we need to go protect them because this is not on our watch. Like we're not letting this happen. So yeah, it's not necessarily about carrier identity. It's about, how can we serve this community? Because I hate when people show up and say, we're going to disintermediate freight brokers. It drives me. If you want to see me twist off, get some stranger to come up to me and say like, we're going to disintermediate.
There will be no freight brokers by the time I'm done here.
I'm like, yeah, I'd be like, all right, honestly, obviously you don't know what you're talking. Like I love twisting off on people about that because it's such an integral part of the supply chain. And it handles and it creates so much stability and smoothness in the transaction. It opens the door for small carriers to have access to large shipper freight that they would never have had access to before. And I know that doesn't always resonate, and that's not always how that appears to certain people, but it's true. And man, there's some great brokers out there. There's some brokerages that like I've seen them go above and beyond for carriers when they're hurting the pain. And I've also seen the bad stuff too. Like I have. It's not all rainbows and unicorns and Pollyanna, but like there's a lot of good out there. And I think this industry is poised for some really, really, really great things in the next 5 years. And I just want to be there to help be a service provider to this fantastic industry.
Where do you see Highway being in 5 years?
I'm in it. I love it. I love it too much. And I'm in it. And this is my masterpiece. Like I want to continue to build and solve things for brokers.
Do you think you could get to a point where the top 200 brokers are all Highway customers?
In some way, in some way I hope. In some way I hope we can provide value to any, to everyone. And the value where they decide to get their credit card. I don't think we'll do all things for all of them. I mean, brokers are different. Brokers are the big in that segment you just mentioned. Like it triggers a thing in my head because that segment, there's a lot of differentiation in the types of brokers. Like there's a lot of large reefer brokers. There's a lot of there's some heavy haul brokers. There's some really big flatbed brokers in there. There's like, I'm just thinking through the names and faces, and like, they're all a little different. And so, yeah, they probably won't use this for everything, but man, I sure hope we get to serve all 200 of them. That would be awesome.
Do you see like obviously the carrier identity is the flagship of what Highway is. Do you see it expanding beyond that into something? Is there a frontier you're interested in that you're not yet there yet, but a problem you're contemplating trying to solve? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah,
Is carrier identity enough?
It's enough for right now. Like, it's all we're eating right now. Like, you say sometimes you eat the bear, sometimes the bear eats you. Like, we need to focus on finish eating this. I think about things, how we could help with better integration of the carrier systems to the brokers, just better communication. So much conflict is all about miscommunication of unmet expectations, which generally result from miscommunication. And if there just was better communication to that carrier sales rep, what's really happening out there? Like, in my mind, like what I want Highway to be is like this window. Because right now, 5 years ago, for sure, carrier sales reps would book carriers without any visibility to whether they were really there or not, whether they were really able to pick up the load. And I just have this visual in my head of like, Highway's this window for the carrier sales rep, like in their monitor, that lets them see through into what's happening in the physical world. And so, yeah, anything I can do to bring, and with our ELD connections that we have now, like, we really do bring that. And my dream is like 5 years from now, a carrier sales rep's like, man, if I can't see you in Highway, if I can't see where you are and I can't know who you are, like,
I want to be
no chance I'm giving you this load. Like, yeah, like, and that's when fraud goes to die. Is when it becomes so expensive to do.
I'm picking up what you're putting down. I like it. I'm Team Highway.
Dude, love it.
So we'll wrap with this here then. So it's been great getting to know you these last 90 minutes. What would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned? And you're on your third business now. And this one, I can see the passion in it and how much you love the problem you're solving. I also can speak to it, knowing enough brokers who use it, that there's a real problem you're solving. What's your advice that you would give to the industry, to individuals in the industry about how to make an impact in our space, like how to be valuable and create value, tangible value for your customers?
Yeah, so I'll talk maybe like to the tech founders and like the tech people. There's a couple pillars that I feel really strongly about. The first is, you're not Mark Zuckerberg. Like, stop trying to pretend like you're Mark Zuckerberg and build Facebook. Like, you're not. Like, that's the exception. You're the rule. Like, learn to live with the rule. So start out by solving a really specific problem that the customer wants you to solve. Like, that is there. Don't start with this like, oh, we're going to be this network of this thing that like connects. Like, no, you're not. Like, you're not Mark Zuckerberg, buddy. Like, just go build something that solves problems, creates revenue, makes people's lives better. Like Tom Curry and Prasad at Q, great example. Just like, here's a problem we're going to solve: appointment scheduling. We're going to solve this one thing. Okay. So it kind of leads into the second thing, which is, I tell guys that call me about this, I say focus plus energy equals impact. So if you have a high level of energy and a high level of focus, you create a high level of impact. That is a law of gravity. Know that to your heart. Like, if you try and serve a bunch of different customer segments, you're going to run out of focus and you're going to run out of impact. Like Highway, the first 18 months, there was a box, and if you didn't fit in the box, we couldn't work with you, right? And it's just like, we love you. We will come for you when we have that ability to integrate with that TMS, but we can't solve the problem
Not
today.
our time yet. Yeah,
not our time.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and the Zuckerberg one is always funny to me when I say that one out loud. But what's the last thing I wanted to say? Tell these young guys. Oh, I had it and I lost it. I got distracted. It's there.
Zuckerberg, focus plus energy equals impact.
Yeah. You can't serve two masters. So, okay, let's just for a second run back to Convoy. Okay, they wanted to be a broker because they liked the TAM and they could raise a bunch of money at a high valuation for the TAM, but then they really wanted to be a software company because of the margins and stickiness and recurring revenue. You can't serve two masters. You can't serve shippers and other brokers. Like, that's not going to work. If you're going to pivot. Don't do a dead man's pivot, which is like a half move, and you just kind of like roll over and die. Like,
camp, one or the other. Yep.
Dude, serve one master. You cannot serve two masters. And that's my message to people that want to build stuff for freight brokers is like, listen, I will be loyal to you and I will help you. But if I ever catch wind that you are selling to both brokers and shippers, you're dead in my book. Like, I will not help you. I won't be an advisor. I have nothing to do with you because you serve one master. And I'm maybe because I love this industry and I view them as friends. Like, I'm just that stuff's got to stop, right? Like, serve one master, because it's biblical. Like, you'll love one and hate the other. So those are don't serve two masters.
Yeah, I think those are all great pieces of advice. The third one, maybe it's an extension of it, but I think have integrity with what you're building and what you're communicating in mass, because I think that's part of the two master concept I see, where it's like a company will come out and say, this is who we are and this is what we do. And behind the curtain, what they do is something completely different that contradicts what they initially said. A lot of times you're seeing this in the vendor space who also happen to be brokers, where it's like, we're a procurement platform for shippers, but low key 80% of our revenue is just standard freight broker. Like, that stuff I don't love, or call it out is come out and say, we are a procurement platform that also is a brokerage. We do them both. Okay, at least you're honest with me about that. I can get behind that a little bit more. But do what you say you're going to do, or be who you say you are. Just an extension of your can't serve two masters point. So
yeah, and look, and like, everyone wants to, like, I'm not a fool. Everyone wants to be a software company. The higher margins, recurring revenue, better valuations, whatever. But dude, our TAMs are small. Like, our TAM is small compared to the TAM you play in. And so you can't try and do both, Convoy. Like, you can't raise $1 billion. Like, dude, Highway will never be $1 billion company. Like, I don't know how to tell you. Like, the physical world we occupy, there's just not enough brokers, right? There's just not enough rev. Like, just won't be. And I'm okay with that because I'm not an arrogant, greedy fool that needs to, enrich himself to the point of, being gorged, right? Like, but if you want to play in a big TAM, you can't be in software because it's just in freight tech software. It's just not that big. Just not that big.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
A lot of hot sports opinions, man. This has been so fun. Oh my gosh.
Hot freight opinions. Listen, it's been great.
Andrew, thank you so much for inviting me, man. I look up to you and your legacy and just have a ton of respect. And it's just an honor to get to be here and speak with you.
It's been great. It's been great getting to know you, and I appreciate your time and energy that you've brought. You've got a great energy to you, and I think our audience will feel that and certainly see it if they watch this on YouTube, which is now one way to watch these shows on YouTube. We've had 3 of them go out on YouTube for the full video. We're doing lots of crazy things, making hand signs, not really, but we're trying to have fun with it. So thank you to our audience for joining us for another episode of the Freight Pod. We'll be back again soon.